kids, we loved it, and she was just like, oh my god, kill me.
You know, I mean, and this may piss people off, but I remember watching like G.I. Joe as a kid, and my father walking in the room going, "This is bullshit," you know. And I don't know why he has a southern accent. We're from New York, but he walked in and and would say things like, "A million rounds of laser ammunition and nobody ever gets killed. This is crap. Turn it off." So yeah, if you don't capture, I think, the attention of the adults, I think you have less of an opportunity to sell tickets. So so like I said, it's dark, but not, like
I don't think dark is the right word. I think it's dramatic.
heavy.
It's heavy,
It's
yeah.
very heavy, heavier than I think is necessary in a children's movie. And this is the point that I was making to you yesterday when we talked about it in sort of preparation for this review. Where I think Up succeeds is and I think The Incredibles succeeded Up more so after watching The Incredibles a second time, is it manages to balance those adult themes with stuff that appeals to kids. And let me go on record as saying movie reviewers have this tendency to fantasize about child intellect. They seem to think children are a lot smarter than... No, children are half retarded.
No. And I'm going to very vehemently disagree with you on this because I am a teacher.
Nope, they're dumb,
No.
and they just want to see stuff blow up.
They are very capable of getting things we don't believe they're going to get. However, what reviewers and I think what adults don't keep in mind is their taste level is very different from ours.
And what would their taste level be?
Well, they're just more willing to accept gaping holes than we are. You know, as adults...
Plot holes.
Plot holes. We rip apart a plot hole. A kid is going to look at it and be like, I don't care how the house is getting, that a house can't really float from balloons. This is awesome. But I do think they pick up on small things. I think they pick up on, this man is sad, he lost his wife, he feels lonely. Mm-hmm. Well, so now, he's going to go on this adventure because that's what he and his wife would have done together.
But don't you think a lot of kids were, in that first 10 minutes of the movie, going, WTF, when do we get to the talking dog?
I think some are, but actually, honestly, and this is so funny that you mention it, I got into a conversation with my principal about this, my boss today. I talked to her, I was like, oh my god, I watched Up this weekend, and I bawled for the first 20 minutes of it, and she's just kind of looking at me, and she laughed, and while she goes, no, she started to laugh, and then she looked at me, and she goes, no, I know why you got upset, and I looked at her, I'm like, did you see this? I mean, did your kids enjoy this? She was like, yes. She goes, kids are very, she goes, my kids liked the fact that here was this man who had a wife and he lost her. Yes, they were sad for the man because he lost his wife, but they still were able to understand that, and that actually did help them understand why they took the house on an adventure. Mm-hmm. And they can follow it, and they do understand it. Now, do they get the little nuances? No. But do they understand the general theme? For the most part, yes.
But that was where I was going with this. I was making kind of a joke about, kids are not going to pick up the nuances, and they're not going to totally be into the heaviness of the beginning of it. But there's enough talking dog and vibrant colors and, chase scenes and an identifiable villain with very clear motivations to keep kids along. And I remember a study that said, if you put babies in front of a TV, if there's a plot line for them to follow, you'll have their attention. But if there's no plot, you'll lose it. Even infants won't sit for that long if there's nothing really to follow.
We need basic story structure.
Right. And that is one of the successes of Up, in that it has there's a villain with very clear motivations. The protagonist goes through the hero's arc. Mm-hmm. When we meet him, he's melancholy, he's sad, he's lonely. They introduce
he gets in trouble. I mean,
mm-hmm. Yeah, and he sees where he's losing his grip on reality and makes a decision that doesn't feel contrived. Yes, it's silly, but even the whole concept of the balloons in the house, everything had a point of origin. It all fit. And again, what's great about Up is that a lot of this is done without any dialogue. What happens all too often in movies, and this is a general criticism, is that it's a lot of tell me in a medium that's visual. Mm-hmm. They always want to tell you something. They always want to explain it to you. But a movie is very visual. I mean, some of the best movies, you get to know everything you need to know in just the visual.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to use Star Wars as an example?
I was going to skip past it, but I think everybody knows at the beginning of Star Wars.
Red Letter Media ripoff.
everybody besides before the Red Letter Media guy did his review of the Phantom Menace knows that the beginning of Star Wars tells you a story in a picture that's worth 1,000 words. And I think there is where some movies succeed and some movies fail. Let's talk about some of the other characters. What did
I
you...
love the little boy.
Okay, Russell.
His name is Russell. He's so cute.
Where we're having this discussion about children not necessarily being able to totally identify with Carl, who's the old man, the protagonist. I think kids readily identify with Russell.
Absolutely. I think, and there's a couple levels that the kids are going to get Russell on. They're going to get that, hey, he's a kid like me. Oh, look, I'm a Boy Scout, whereas he's a wilderness scout or something like that. I can't remember what they were called. But kids can relate to that. Here's a guy, here's a kid who wants to kind of be helpful because he wants to earn the badge, but he wants to be helpful. And as we continue to meet Russell, it actually amazes me that this is not a flat character. This character has real depth to him. I mean, here's a kid who, when we first start off, it's just, oh, can I help you cross the street or do, whatever, and is easily duped. But as you continue to go on, you realize this is a kid who wants to help everything, and he cares about animals and people, and he's going through his own personal stuff.
I want to pinpoint that because when you meet Russell, he's trying to earn a badge for helping the elderly, and so he's literally reading this thing and going, I have to assist the elderly. It's my assist the elderly badge. And what starts out as sort of a one-note joke gets a payoff. Mm-hmm. It gets a payoff later on in the movie.
Well, in the end.
Yeah. It's a very specific payoff that tells you so much about that character, and what are his motivations. And again, I'm big into, why am I reviewing movies and talk about this? Because there were some movies that are completely absent of things that are supposed to be in movies. Motivations, plot structure, etc. This movie had all that.
Mm-hmm. It did, and it's a cartoon. Which I think to me is like the biggest piece here. I'm like, I think that children's movies are discredited so often as just being money makers. And I think that if you really start looking at them on a little bit deeper level, you'll see, no, it's not just to make money. There actually is an element of story there, and there is an element that, adults and children can both fall in love with.
The villain. Again, I don't want to give too much of the plot away, but the villain starts out as a childhood hero.
Of Carl
and Ellie's.
It's kind of what brought them together.
Right. And he starts off not as the villain, per se. Right. But becomes one due to his perception of Carl.
Well, I think, the other side of it, though, is he becomes the villain because he's
lost sight